Eat.
There's something powerful about the journey of leadership, the daily steps, the long-term vision, and everything we learn along the way. Welcome to Leadership Labs, where we explore these journeys with the incredible leaders of Aurora Public Schools. In each episode, we hear from those who are helping guide our district toward Destination APS, sharing their stories, maybe some of their challenges, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Today, I'm excited to have my right-hand man, Craig Lyle, with us. Craig is our Chief of School Leadership and Support, a role he's just completing his first year in, but he's no stranger to APS. He's got a 25-year long history in our district, having served as a teacher, an assistant principal, and operations director, and chief operations officer before stepping into his current chief role. But what's more is Craig was born and raised right here in Aurora, and it's a deep well of experience and local commitment that we're eager to draw from today. So, Craig, welcome to Leadership Labs.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And before we dive into it, I just want to say thanks for doing this. I've had the opportunity to listen to some of our leaders and learn a lot from our leaders. And I know I have some big shoes to fill. So I appreciate you doing this and raising the voice of some of the leaders. And here we go.
Thank you for highlighting that. Craig and I were talking really recently, and one of the things that I told Craig, we're really excited to have you on. And there's some heavy hitters that have been through here. So it's we're honored to add you to the list of those. So before we dive into your journey, would love just to hear a little bit more about who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm a proud Aurorian. Born and raised in Aurora, which is crazy. I mean, you run into people from all over the country, and when you tell people, yeah, I'm a native Colorado, native Aurora, they're like, what? There are many of you. But very proud. I grew up still 516 Kenton was the address of my first house, and it backed right up to Lansing. So it was when school was starting. I got to hop my back fence, and I was at the playground of Lansing. And so my early years in APS really shaped me. I was a student at Lansing Elementary, as I mentioned. I come from my parents. My mom was a lifelong nurse. She worked evenings. And my dad was a lifelong mailman. So they were committed to their careers, committed to their organizations. And they kind of shaped my values, my middle-class values of hard work, of appreciating the opportunities that I'm provided, and also kind of the role of being in service and serving others. I always tell the joke, my dad took being a mailman very, very seriously, to the point where he would get very irritated when another mailman would cut across somebody's lawn. He said, "That's not how we treat people. That's not how we treat people's things." And at first I was like, "Dad, that's the straightest route to the next mailbox." And he's like, "No, we got to do it the right way." And so that shaped me early on, and had an opportunity. Got to high school, had a teacher that really inspired me by the name of James Bond. Mr. Bond. He was a social studies, a history teacher my junior year at Overland High School, and I said, you know what? I want to be like him. And I had a baseball coach at the same time, Tony Schembeck at Overland High School, and I said, you know what? I want to be like him. And so a few people that kind of shaped me as I went to college and decided, you know what, I want to teach. I want to make the impact that some of my teachers made on me. And so long story short, I have 11-year-old son. I have a beautiful wife who also works in the district. and still I don't live in Aurora anymore. I live right across the street, but in Denver. But Aurora's my home and will always be my home.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. I had the opportunity to connect with some of our staff members at the Welcome Center today, and was reflecting a lot about the impact of, our families and also educators in our life. And so, a shout out to the original Mr. and Mrs. Lyle for doing a good job raising you, Craig, and we're glad that you're here. You oversee a wide range of critical teams: school performance, behavior supports, athletics, activities, centralized enrollment, safety and security, and even compliance this year.
Yes.
What does a typical day, if you could describe one, look like leading such a diverse and all of those vital areas of our organization? What was today like?
There aren't many typical days, but it usually starts early in the morning with a text message, an IRT alert, that there's a gas leak at this building, or a safe to tell that pops up on my phone. So usually starting early morning, just making sure our kids are going to be safe, and our buildings and that sort of thing. So early mornings usually start with a quick call to our security director, or to maintenance and operations, or whoever it may be. But one of the things I really enjoy about this job is there is no typical day. I get to work with some of the best and the brightest in our district, and each day I learn from the various individuals, whether it's through meetings, whether it's just watching them interact with our stakeholders, be it our principals, be it our families, be it most importantly our students. I get to spend time with district officials, but also I get to spend a fair amount of time in schools. And so I get to see how all the pieces of an organization kind of come together, in areas where they are coming together, and areas where they're still working in silos, and kind of help to identify those areas and work to improve those areas. Because ultimately, I remember on day one starting this job, and Jesús, you said your evaluation is going to be real simple. It's going to be, are you an asset to the schools? Are you helping them get better? Are you making it more difficult for our schools, or are you having no impact? So I'll have my first evaluation here in a few weeks, and we'll find out how I'm doing. But I really enjoy the work.
Making them better. He's been making them better. I appreciate that, Craig. And you spoke a little bit about this already, being an Aurora native, being that, this is your hometown. You're so committed to the school district. How does that connection to the city and to the district influence your approach to serving the students and the schools here in Aurora?
Yeah, absolutely. I cherish Aurora because of its diversity and the uniqueness of Aurora. And I think we are the most diverse district in the state of Colorado. And I think that makes that leads us to our strengths. If we can tap into the genius that our community holds, we've got industry here, whether it be hospitality. We've got an incredible medical campus here. We've got engineering firms. We're a real rich and diverse community, and sometimes others who aren't familiar with Aurora will try and tell our story. And I think it's really, really important that people who know Aurora and know the strengths of Aurora and know the people of Aurora can kind of stand up and tell the accurate story of Aurora. Because it has incredible people here, and we continue to grow, which is pretty incredible. But we've got pockets of such rich culture and rich history and tradition. And whether you're going down the Colfax corridor or you're out east in new communities, there's just so much value in the people, and that's what's kept me here in Aurora.
Absolutely. It's booming, it's growing, and it is the place to be. Let's do a quick little shift here on a little bit of your training ground. I think every leader's journey to leadership roles is different and unique, and of course there's some similarities, but you've dedicated 25 years to APS. What initially drew you to that first teaching job right here in APS?
Yeah, it's funny about what you plan for and then what you don't plan
Yep.
for. And so I went to school up at Colorado State University, and I came back and knew I wanted to teach in the metro area. At that time, I was like, I want to be like the two people I referenced earlier. I want to be like my history teacher in high school and my baseball coach. So I was like, I'm going to be a high school teacher and I'm going to be a high school coach. And so, but as I came back, and it was kind of it was 2000 when I came back, and I'd finished school and my student teaching, and I did my student teaching at Smoky Hill High School, but always I started my educational career as a student in Aurora. So I was looking at Aurora and looking at a few other districts. And so my first one of my applications was to Marachek Middle School, which called, and I sat down and had an interview, and the principal's like, can you hold on for a minute? And I was like, sure. And the principal, Mark Pruka at the time, said, hey, we'd like to offer you the 6th grade social studies job. And I was through the roof. I said, yes, I got a job. And never envisioned that I would teach middle school. But I was excited. It was 6th grade. It was a job. It was Aurora. It was a community that I knew and I was familiar with. So I showed up, was given the textbook with a rough outline of pacing and what it should look like, and taught for about a week, and said, whoa, I got a lot to learn. And so didn't find the textbook as engaging as I would want for my students. So my first paycheck, I bought my own curriculum, History Alive. And so my entire first paycheck went to a new curriculum, a curriculum that I'd read about and been exposed to at college. And it was the best investment I ever made. And that year of teaching 6th grade students at Marachek Middle School, I fell in love with the students. I had a team of teachers that were all relatively new to the profession that we grew together, and then fell in love. And so a lot of my career has been with middle school students, and I wouldn't change it.
That's amazing. Thank you. Okay, so now interested in just learning a little bit about from teacher to a building leader role. Tell us about how you came to make that transition.
Yeah.
What pushed you to the dark side?
Exactly. Sometimes
shout out to the teachers. Shout out to the teachers. If
we
have any who listen.
Yeah, when I started in education, I was going to be a teacher my entire career.
That's right.
I had no aspirations to go into school administration, and definitely not district administration. I loved being a teacher, felt challenged by being a teacher. And then it's just funny how opportunities kind of present themselves. And so I was, after 6 years of teaching at Marachek, I was pegged by a colleague. One of my strengths was the classroom culture, and was pegged by a colleague at East Middle School to say, hey, we've got a dean of students position opened up, and we think kind of your skill set would lend itself to establishing climate and culture across the building. What you're doing at a classroom level, we'd love to see that kind of expand building wide. And so didn't foresee myself as a dean. It was a middle school athletic director position as well. But I said, you know what, that would be an interesting challenge. And it was a middle school just down the road. So after 6 or 7 years of teaching at Mirachek, moved over to East Middle School and became a dean of students and an athletic director. And then a year after that was pegged by the principal to say, hey, we're looking for an assistant principal. Would you be interested? And I remember to this day sitting with the assistant superintendent. It was the final interview to be the assistant principal, and he's like, "Are you sure about this, Craig? Because it kind of gets lonely as you become into the administration and that sort of thing." And I said, "Yeah, I think I am." So long story short, was assistant principal at East Middle School, and then again provided me an opportunity. Learned a lot, loved middle school. Didn't think I was going to be a lifelong assistant principal. It really was. Every position I've ever had, I was like, This is it. This is what I want to do. I mean, every day is challenging. Every day is rewarding. Every day. I mean, long ago I pulled my hair out, and so had the opportunity as Vista Peak opened up. Similar, I had a colleague tap me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, they're opening up a new athletic program, an operations side of the house." Vista Peak was opened in a very unique way. Where it was opened as kind of the medical model, where there's chief of staff and chief of surgery. So we had our chief, or not our chiefs, but our directors who were in charge of the pathways. And then my role was director of operations of the entire campus. So the P8 moving into the high school. And so oversaw all the operational components of the two schools. And then moved to being a principal at Columbia, which I loved very much. And then, long story short, moved into the district role. Anthony Sturgis, who was a mentor of mine and someone who kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, your operational experience may lend itself nicely. Are you interested in interviewing?" And so that brought me to the district, and then have been here the last 3 years, and have really enjoyed my time. It's definitely a steep learning curve, but it's a great group of people.
Yeah. So, thank you for walking us through the journey.
Yeah.
You mentioned Anthony, and we'd just love to hear more about either his mentorship or any other key mentors that you've had during your time here in APS who maybe help guide your path or shape your leadership style.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I was at Network 2 today at the principal meeting, and one of the principals, Drew, was talking about Anthony and Anthony, how he would make principals feel. He'd show up with a big smile. He would say, "Hey, what do you need? I'm here. I didn't come with an agenda." Very much said, "I'm here to support the work of our schools and to support the work of our principals and how important that work is." And so that's how Anthony made me feel when he stopped by my building and said, "What do you need? I'll move mountains. I'll do my very best to try and get you what you need to be successful." And I watched that, and I watched how he interacted with the leaders and those sort of things. And so that was a piece that I kind of took from him and try and emulate at times to say, "Hey, the district role is here to serve schools," and that's has to be focus number one. It's not to put out a separate agenda or put more work on a principal's plate. The principal job is the hardest, is the most difficult job I've ever had. And I know how difficult that role is. So it takes a village for schools to be successful, and the village is the district staff in the community. And I take that from Anthony, that to show up to say, what do you need? And I'm here to provide what I can to make the job a little bit easier in support of our kids.
I love that so much, and share the sentiment. You know, we're here to serve our school leaders, to create the conditions for teachers to do their very difficult and important work every day. I actually hope, Will, you don't mind, but I popped into the Network 1 and 3 meeting this morning and sat next to Will, and he's finishing his first year as a principal, and so I asked him, how's it going? How'd it go? For the first year. And he said, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of learning, a lot of growth, a lot of things to celebrate, a lot of challenges. And he said, and this is the hardest job I've had in a very long time. I said, well, get used to it, because it's the hardest job. It's very difficult. And so, we part of the Leadership Labs is really to honor the work that school leaders do every day.
Absolutely.
So thank y'all.
Yeah.
You're just finishing your first year in this role, which is, a pretty complex one, overseeing so many different interconnected departments. What has been a big learning or surprise in this first year in this new role?
There's a notebook full of things that I have in year one of doing anything. You're kind of balancing what you think what you actually know, and it's and oftentimes you're like, I'm just trying to stay ahead of the game a little bit. So it like I said, it's been a steep learning curve, because a district of our size is complex and has a lot of needs. And so there are a lot of very passionate, driven people that are here to serve, but to align that work is a challenge. It's a challenge for sure. And so there are some things that as I've learned along the way, one is honoring people, honoring people for their expertise. No one person has all the answers. There's a Brene Brown quote that I had on my door when I was principal, is, I'm not here to be right, crossed out. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to be right, cross it out. I'm not here to be right, cross it out. I'm here to get it right. Mm-hmm. And the only way to get it right is to leverage the skill set of really smart, dedicated people. So as you work with new teams, some teams I worked with last year and have built a relationship and kind of working style. There are also new teams that I have now gotten to know a little bit, understand their skill set, understand like how my work impacts their work, and there have been some hurdles in that, and I've learned along the way about how I can set conditions that let people be themselves and be successful in an aligned strategy to do that. But that hasn't been easy. Right. And so there's, like I said, there's a notebook of things that I have that, like, going into year two, I'm going to show up differently, or I'm going to do this differently. Yeah. And so for that, it's been some sleepless nights, but I'm a little bit wiser. Absolutely. Going into year two.
Thank you for sharing that, for the transparency, the vulnerability. And, I actually had this conversation with another colleague earlier too, that, sometimes when you move from like teacher to AP, or AP to principal, or a principal to a principal supervisor role, that you sort of know about the next role just from what your imagination tells you, right? And also maybe what you've observed people in those roles to be and not to be, right?
Yep,
And so
yep.
sometimes you think like, "Ooh, I would emulate that," or like,
Yeah,
"Ooh,
yeah,
I would do this
yeah.
totally different."
Yep,
And so that first year of in a
yeah,
new role
yeah,
is, kind of you're making sense of. I imagined it to be this way. I
yeah,
thought it was going to be this.
yeah,
I thought I knew this.
yeah,
I now know this.
yeah,
So yeah, thank you
yeah,
for
yeah,
sharing
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Um, okay, you've been in APS 25 years.
Yep.
This is the tricky question that for all leaders that I've had the chance to chat with uh, to share as you look back,
Yeah,
because there's many. You probably have things that you're very proud of just
yeah,
from this morning
yeah,
and earlier this week, because the teams we get to work with are doing incredible stuff
yeah,
every day.
yeah.
What's one or two of your like proudest moments over those 25 years?
Yeah, I think there are a number of things that I would point to, and they're all around relationships.
Mm,
And so I think back to opening up the Vista Peak
yeah.
campus, and there's nothing like it. As far as the challenge and as far as the rewards of opening up something that's brand new. And so I remember the early days of sitting there with Garrett Rosa, Dr. Patterson, Dr. Enriquez. There was a cohort of people that were charged with kind of creating the mission vision for the school and hiring staff and opening up two buildings in consecutive years. So we opened up Vista Peak Exploratory with preschool through ninth grade students in that first year. And it's not what ninth graders envisioned their first high school,
Right.
what it would look like being back in a P8 building,
Even if it was new.
even if it was brand new.
Right.
These were students that envisioned prom
Yeah.
and varsity athletics and those sort of things. And there was in our first graduating class, there were 160 students in that class that I was with from ninth grade, and then we moved over to the high school with this group. And this was a group that I knew in the mornings through athletics. I would drive home at night because they were spread out throughout the community, and really got to know that group of students and the tightness of the staff. We would work long hours to create conditions for the students, and just establishing some things that are still in place at Vista Peak, whether that be the week-long intensives that one of the students that presented to the board talked about, how the intensive week has had a huge impact on their learning. And so being able to create that, but not create that in isolation. Like Rangeviews had been doing intensive. So building on incredible the skill set of people to help establish a new community in Vista Peak is something I'm proud of. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good one. Sorry,
Yeah.
put you on the spot.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
We're gonna shift now into a little bit lighter questions here. So the leadership playlist.
Yes.
You mentioned an author earlier, but we all need that fuel for the journey. Would love to hear what keeps you motivated. Are there any leadership books that have either influenced you over the last 25 years, or even just something that you read recently that you might recommend to folks who are listening?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Heath brothers, and there's a book that I know I've referenced with you, The Power of Moments, which I think is a really inspirational book to me about how do we create conditions for moments moments for our staff, moments for our kids that shape who they become, whether that be academically, socially, emotionally. There's an anecdote in the book about Disney World. Disney World's considered the greatest place on earth. Not my favorite place, but for many, the greatest place on earth. And they have the premise that if you ask people every hour on the hour, how's your day? How's it going? And 0 being this is awful, to 10 being this is the best moment of my life, families would wake up, they would wait in line, their kid would be crying, they'd be like, it's right now it's a 1, right now it's a 2, next hour it's a 3, they're hungry and that sort of thing. But then there's that moment where it's a perfect 10 and you're on that roller coaster and your kid's smiling, and it's that moment. And then when you think back to that moment, that's how Disney becomes the greatest place on earth, is because you had that 10. So I think about that as we create conditions in our schools around what does that look like? Not every lesson's going to be a 10. But what are those 10 moments in the classroom? What are those 10 moments on stage in a theater program, or in a music program, or in athletics, or in a club, or whatever, or in the cafeteria? What are those moments, and how do we create those and build upon? So when people think back to, I was an Aurora Public Schools student, and these are the moments that shaped who I am. That was the teacher that shaped who I am. That book and the Heath brothers have a lot of different things around made to stick and some other things that I'm a big fan. So that shapes kind of how I think about things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about what's playing in your leadership headphones lately? Talk to us about. I know you like a diverse palette of have a diverse palette of musical taste, but what's a genre, an artist, a song or album that you've been listening to recently?
Yeah, I think back to first time I met Jalen Coates, and we asked a similar question, and I said, you know what, two of the artists, and this is back when, but two of the greatest concerts I ever went to were Outkast and Garth Brooks. Jalen was like, that makes no sense at all. And so I was like, I do have an eclectic, I do 90s hip hop is kind of, I am a big fan of 90s hip hop, but I'll listen to country, I'll listen to jazz, I'll listen to bluegrass and that sort of thing. Right now, I'm not listening to a lot of music. When I do have free time and working out or that sort of thing, I need a Peloton instructor or somebody yelling at me, step it up, you can do better. But yeah, I think podcasts, I'm a little bit of, I was social sciences major, so economics, politics, those sort of things. So cool. Listening to different podcasts around current events, which isn't very uplifting, but still have a interest in poli-sci.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Destination APS.
Yes.
Lightning round. As we near the finish line, just have a few quick questions remaining. But what does Destination APS mean to you, especially from your vantage point, overseeing so many of the critical support systems for schools?
Yeah, Destination APS is ensuring that all students are able to shape their own future and successful future. And so providing opportunities, providing the moments where students feel safe, they feel seen, they feel valued. Mm-hmm. They're given rigorous opportunities and unique opportunities. I went to APS and I had an opportunity to work at Raytheon or Connected, mm-hmm. or whether that be at the Gaylord, right. or unique opportunities for kids to shape who they want to become. So that's really, really important. And Destination APS is working with diverse group of students and as adults, that kind of help shape who students eventually become, and they walk out of APS prepared for whatever the next opportunity they seek out, and that's a mission that I think is really, really important. And Destination APS sets the pathway for safe conditions to be seen, conditions to be valued, and conditions for rigorous opportunities that expose our students to a lot of different avenues and pathways that pique interest and kind of develop those interests.
Absolutely. This is the place to be.
Yep, absolutely.
What excites you the most about the future of APS?
Yeah, I think I'm really excited about the opportunity. It seems as we continue to work on building our connections throughout the community. The leadership, I've had the opportunity to sit in many conversations with our superintendent, Superintendent Giles, who has a very clear vision of what Destination APS is and what APS's role in that is, what our community partners' role in that will be, what our community role in that is, and that's a vision that I can get on board with. That it takes all of us. It's not going to be one individual that does this work, or a few individuals or pockets of brilliance. We've got to have systemic brilliance, and so the thing that also inspires me is we have it in Aurora. We have it. You walk into various spaces. You walk into a classroom in Arkansas, or you walk into a classroom at Hinckley, or you walk into a classroom at Murphy Creek, and you're like, that's Destination APS.
That's right.
And so how do we scale that across our district?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. What advice would you give to an educator in the Aurora Public Schools who either, like you and I, thought, hey, I'm going to be a teacher for 35 years, or somebody who's in the classroom or in an AP role, and they're thinking about maybe someday I'd like to be a school leader or a district leader or something like that?
Yeah. There's few things. That's a good question. And so the advice I would give is be you. Be authentic in the work. It's not easy by any stretch, and there are good days and there are bad days. I know I always give Jesús a hard time because every day he's like, I'm on day 245 of awesome, and some days I'm like, wow, I aspire for that streak. But there are challenging days. So lean on colleagues, because no one can do this job alone. So whether you're a classroom teacher, there are colleagues in the building, and I've seen it. A shoulder to cry on. A friend to go to happy hour and talk about your day, a friend to help develop a lesson plan or give you feedback. You got to lean on others to do this work, because there's brilliance in this district, and there's a lot of it. So lean on that and shape your own path, because education comes from everybody in our system. And so everybody plays a role in that.
That's right.
Yeah.
304 days.
304. You're on 304. I know. I had a few bad days in there, so my streak went back to zero. Yeah.
It's funny. I was telling Yolanda the other day, and she asked me, and I said, once you hit the 1 year mark, you stop counting in days. Now you're counting in the years. Craig, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey, your insights with us, your 25 years of dedication to APS, from the classroom to your current role, is truly inspiring. Hearing about your commitment to this community, Your navigation of diverse leadership roles and your vision for supporting schools is such a valuable perspective for all of us. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And to folks who are listening, thank you for joining us on Leadership Labs. Join us next time as we continue exploring the paths of those who are helping to guide us toward Destination APS. And as I always like to say at the end of these, until then, keep running your race with purpose.